such progress in the last 10 years. It's become a force for good in our nations, but the time is now here to choose who will be the next General Secretary. I can understand how difficult it is right now to even contemplate an election within Unite, but it matters. This matters. The vision for our union matters for our members going forward, and it matters for wider society. And we have to have a General Secretary who wants to give this union back to our members. I know and understand what you as members and you have gone through over the past year. Present COVID, and the majority of those have been workers. Here are the new pandemic across all of our sectors and re-employ them on dramatically reduced terms and conditions. We have a government that's offering 1% to our NHS heroes. Happy to clap them on an April night a year ago, only to offer them 1% a year on, and a Labour it by 2.1%. These are people who are at the front end every single day of COVID. People who put their lives at risk.
Hiya. So, Andrea, I think we're live.
Yes, brilliant. We're here this evening to hear from Howard about his manifesto, and we've got a lineup of brilliant speakers from across the UK who are going to be speaking about his pledges and how they believe that he is the right person to take Unite forward. So, Howard, how are you feeling about tonight, mate?
I'm feeling good about it, Andrea. I don't think the video played quite right there, but never mind. We'll have to make up for it with the rest of the show. But I'm feeling it. For anybody who's not seen the video, obviously go to the Twitter website and play it down yourselves. It is the official campaign Twitter. But I'm feeling good, Andrea. The document, the manifesto document is massive. Obviously, there's well over 40 commitments. It's supposed to be a document to start a conversation within our union. We're not going to go through it by line tonight, that's for sure. But hopefully we'll be able to give people an impression of the important areas that we're trying to tackle and the changes that we're going to make to the union.
Howard, like you said, mate, you can't get the tech at times, innit? So we're really looking forward to hearing from our speakers. And now let's go over to our first speaker, who is Anne McKinley from Scotland. She is an NHS hero and she is in the Unite branch in Scotland. So over to you, Anne.
Anne's muted.
I think you're muted.
Muted at the moment.
I'll start again. There we go, tech.
It is the comment of the year, isn't it, Anne? You're on mute.
Isn't it? 100%.
Exactly.
I know, you're on mute, Anne. So again, good evening, everyone. I'm Anne, as Andrea says. I'm a nurse currently working in the NHS in Glasgow. I'm a Unite member, and I suppose the first thing that I would say, being an NHS worker for 30 odd years, is that we've never really seen times like this. I think we know that COVID and the pandemic has compounded everything. We've got rising levels of poverty and hardship, but that in turn has caused a lot of hardship on already tired and vulnerable staff. It's also caused a lot of apathy. Is that phrase of they went from hero to zero, and there's a massive debate around pay rise and things, which we'll come on to. I also feel that my experience of joining a union within the NHS was always a really positive one. That's not there as much now. There is this sort of demonisation of unions, and it's not, it's something that staff should be much more engaged in. We need the unions to kind of drive forward support, and we need to support staff at this very difficult time and difficult times to come. support our terms and conditions and strengthen our collective voice. And I'm supporting Howard because I believe that Howard has supported us up until now and will support going forward. And I also believe that Howard will modernise our union. We need to kind of build, get an industrial strategy going. We've got some campaigns, starting. We need to recruit. We definitely need to recruit more staff into the union, and it's great to hear some of the pledges that Howard has within the manifesto. Yes, I mean, staff in the front line have gone above and beyond, and they need to have someone on their side like Howard. Unite is the only union that will support, not and challenge pay and conditions. And I think, especially around women, the care sector and the NHS, the workers, majority of workers, it's dominated by women, a lot of low-paid women, especially working in the care sector in low-paid jobs. And I believe Howard, he's expressed, it's on so many occasions, and he's never excluded women within his discussions. And, carrying out essential jobs during COVID, very isolating jobs within the care sector as well. So that's definitely an area that needs to be challenged. It's totally unacceptable, and I know that we've got Howard on our side. Howard, you've also pledged to secure 15% for the NHS, a pay rise for NHS and care workers. I think that's absolutely spot on. There's been zero rises, not in line with inflation whatsoever. And you've obviously also pledged to put resources into a massive recruitment drive in line with NHS recruitment. So that's absolutely brilliant. I'm 100% behind that. The other thing that I think is fantastic, and again, it goes back to that point about, recruiting and, staff joining a union, and it should be the norm, get that, get support from each other, is the pledge to provide free Unite membership for our student nurses and student paramedics, many who are working or, setting jobs to get by. So that's going to help our collective voice immensely. And finally, I would say that, mentioned it before, that Unite have the civic and industrial might to hold Labour and the Tories to account. And you quite rightly have said that you're going to focus on post-COVID priorities, Howard, and improving the lives of the members. And again, giving that devolved authority to the nations and regions will just complement everything that you've kind of pledged. So I'm voting for Howard, and I'm voting to save our NHS.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so
dear, she covered so much in there, Andrea, didn't she? That's all in the union, the NHS, modernising, precarious work, decentralising, everything's in there.
Exactly. So Howard, obviously Anne has brought up that you pledged, to support the NHS pay rise for 15%, also free membership for student and paramedics as well. Would you like to explain a little bit more about that?
Well, I believe fundamentally, Andrew, that coming out of this crisis, that Unite has to be relevant in the NHS. The NHS is obviously the epitome of socialism. We're all proud of it, but we know the privatisation that's going on. We've seen the disgraceful treatment of the most vulnerable in care homes through COVID. We've seen the decision of this government to allow patients to be released to care homes even though they still had COVID, and it's disgraceful. So it's only Unite that will stand up for workers in the NHS, get a proper industrial strategy, demand the 15%, and obviously, there's a free membership offer in there for student nurses and student paramedics to get them to come to Unite. But also, Anne referenced this two aspects there that are very pivotal in everything that we're trying to say in this manifesto. The first is decentralisation, giving the power back to the nations and the regions so as they can take the decisions for their sectors. And secondly, the modernisation, which is absolutely vital. It's, and the big pledge around modernisation is the Unite TV. It'll be on YouTube, but it'll be fully resourced. Each region will have studios. Sectors will be able to share their successes. We'll be able to talk to young people about collectivism changing the world. It'll be an education tool. It'll also be some place to go to get your advice if you're a rep. It'll also give assistance in respect of linking in with our mental health helpline, which will be announced next week. So all of that modernisation is just a vital part of what we're offering now for this General Secretary election.
Nice one, Howard.
Well, listen, I'm going to introduce the next speaker because of the fact that he's such a good friend of mine. He sits on the Executive Council. I'm the General Secretary for his sector, and he doesn't have to keep me on my toes in respect of it, Andrea. It's my good friend Cliff Bowen, and he's next up, and Cliff's going to talk to us about just transition, free ports, and whatever else you fancy, Cliff. So the floor is yours.
How long have I got, Howard? How long have I got? Thanks for the introduction. I'm Cliff Bowen, as Howard says. I'm the Executive Council member for the chemicals, pharmaceutical, process, textiles and glass sector, which is also the longest strapline in the union and one that I always have to keep on my toes so I don't forget. Where do I begin with our sector? I mean, you know, decarbonisation, just transition, green jobs, free ports, lifelong learning, upskilling, mental health, you name it, we've got it. And every sector of the union is going to be faced with these issues. But I can only in particular speak about my sector for the moment. If I look at the attacks that's coming across the hill on just about every plant across our sector, you know, you talk about things like just transition, the need for this transition to a new, greener world that we're all wanting to get to, but we can't have it at the price of good jobs and the societies that are built up round about these jobs and these workplaces. Do you know, it's about apprenticeships, it's about the future, it's about your kids, your neighbours' kids, it's all of that stuff. We have the decarbonisation agenda that's ongoing at the minute, just absolutely massive for our sector. Do you know, we have people working in my sector who are going to have to upskill. They're going to have to constantly learn new skills. Do you know what happens to these people? What happens to these workers if they can't upskill? What happens to their mental health? All of this kind of this stuff. And these are the issues that we're talking to Howard about all the time. And listen, Howard's one of the hardest working people in the union. You know, he touches everything. I mean, there's not a dispute that goes on in this union that he's not involved in. But he's always got time, you know, he's always got time to listen. And if I take, for example, the issue of free ports, you know, we hear about Labour and we just look at what's happened to that Labour Party over the last couple of days, and it's no surprise to anybody. And if you think you're struggling down south, you should try living in Scotland and being a Labour supporter. You know, it's a hard time for us all. But one of the real issues that they have is that they don't connect with the working class anymore. Do you know, we've got guys like Paul Peacock at Teesside raising issues on free ports, a good comrade of mine that's bringing that to the fore. He brought it to me, I took it to Howard, and guess what? We went to the Labour Party, and guess what? They were absolutely nowhere on free ports, nowhere. It took an activist like Paul Peacock to come to me, to go to Howard, and Howard listened. And do not underestimate the power of listening to the lay activists, because they are the lifeblood of our organisation. Howard listened to Paul, he took that issue on, and it was top of the pops. It's discussed at the executive, it's discussed at the Labour Party, and people are waking up to this. And it's one of the most important things that we need to do. We need to listen. And Howard gets that. Howard listens to the members. Because if we don't listen to the lay activists in this union, we are lost. And he gets there, he gets it right behind the members, and he gives them the voice. And it's very, very powerful coming for these guys and girls in the union. And they run with these things. We've got great activists. We just need to give them the platform. And that is one of Howard's greatest skills. He gives people these platforms to run. They're passionate, they get involved, they get the members involved, and that's the future. Do you know, if you look at mental health, do you know, you look at the pandemic that we're all, every sector, every person in the union, every person in this country and the world suffering from. Do you know, we're all struggling for this. And right across the reps, the workers within that we represent, the people who work for this union, everybody's struggling with this stuff. And I'm not joking. I went to Howard with this stuff, and Howard ran with that as well. Do you know, we're going to launch a mental health campaign that's going to get launched across the union for people, a service for reps to come out, to speak to people about it and that, so we can engage with each other. We all speak to each other. Who looks after each other? Do you know, we need to look after each other. Who looks after the reps that are struggling with this stuff? Because we take on board, the activists, we take all this stuff on board, but we need to help these people as well. We need to put arms around each other. And Howard Beckett's running with that as well. Do you know, as I say, there are tons and tons of issues. You know, I could go all night with this stuff. But we need a general secretary that's going to look at all these issues, and especially within our sector at the minute, because it's going to come to absolutely everybody. Do you know, if you look at all the round about automation, round about all these issues like automation, you look at the car industry, you look right across every sector of the union, absolutely massive, and it's coming to us. Do you know, we ran a session within the CPPT&G sector just on just transition. And I was a refinery worker from Grangemouth, and he came on, a young man that came on, a great comrade, Chris Hammond, and he said to us, you know, one of the things with just transition is, this is here today. Do you know, we can all talk about it, but it's here today. We just lost 1 in 3 jobs at Grangemouth Refinery. And where are we going? What are we doing for these workers right here, right now? I hear all the time about green jobs and this new green world we're going to come to. And I say this at every meeting I go to, and I make no apology for it. Where are these green jobs? What should our kids at school right now, what should they be studying to apply for these green jobs? What skills do they need? Because nobody's talking to them. Nobody's talking to these kids in school at the minute. They're your kids, they're my kids, it's the future apprenticeships. Where are these jobs? Nobody is talking about this stuff. I hear about Saudi Arabia of renewables one more time for this Scottish government. Honestly, I'll lose my mind. But Howard's running with this stuff. We're getting on top of it, and we're going to get an answer for the workers that we represent. So I'll finish there, Howard. I could go on and on. But listen, a fantastic job. The best Assistant General Secretary I've worked under. He gets it. We need to get him in for the future of this union.
Thank you, Cliff. Thank you, comrade. Listen, I'm going to come back at you on a little bit of stuff, but Andrew, I just want to reference that on the bottom of the screen, we've got thanks going up for the branches that have nominated so far, which is superb. Like, it's, you know, in the chat, people have put up a Bristol and Gloucester community. We've seen NHS in Leicestershire, which is massive. Obviously, Petra Ineos and the Cotter branch, which is, you know, very close to my heart with all of the disputes that we've gone through together. JSK, Irvine, Airbus and Broughton is fantastic at North Nottingham. Sure, like, wonderful start to the campaign. And I also want to give a shout out, I've got a couple of questions for Cliff, but I also want to give a shout out to Thurrock Waste, which came up in the chat. Dean Compton put a comment up in the chat to thank us for going down to the picket line. And there's a disgraceful example. It is fire and rehire. Workers who were forced to work through COVID, not given PPE for quite some time until July of last year without PPE, and then whenever we're finished through COVID, this is a council that's brought the service in-house, and in bringing the service in-house has saved themselves £3 million. And what did they do post-COVID? Attack our members' terms and conditions, and they're facing losing to up to £5,000 a person. So they're out on strike right now. If people can get down to the third picket line, please do. It's an incredible picket line down there, showing proper solidarity, and please get the message out loud and proud. Dean, as and when we have Unite TV, mates, your dispute would be all over it, and everybody would know it in every region and in every nation, and you would see the strength of collectivity. Cliff, I've got a few questions for you just made. Obviously, we've seen the election results, and the Tory mayoral election the Tory success in the mayoral election in Tyne Tees, and he's the individual who's been right at the forefront of pushing free ports. Now, I've got my own views on this, but I would be interested in yours. Do you think we continue with our narrative of saying the dangers of free ports, or do we need to change our narrative?
Absolutely stick to your guns, Howard. You know, I mentioned Paul Peacock earlier, and what a job he's done in free ports. You know, they are. You know, one of the key things in the free ports is it's like everything else, right? The average lay member, you know, it's not top of their agenda. It's like just transition, it's free ports, and it's not till we start speaking to them and engaging with them that people wake up to the actual, you know, the issues, the real issues round about things like just transition and free port. Because people, it's not top of their agenda, but it should be. And see, when we start talking to them about it, people get it, and then they start saying, "Where are we in this?" You know, and as Unite, we are there. We've got a strategy around the free ports. We are talking to the members. We're understanding. We're running with the issues. You know, we had meetings with the SNP in Scotland and the minister responsible for that, and we were pressing them on these issues. You know, it's like, where is the ability for us to collectively organise within these places? Are you going to move businesses in and out of these free port areas? Because people think that free ports, you know, they think it's just docks and ships and stuff like that, but it's not. You know, we know within Unite, we're there. And Howard, it wasn't until you started digging, and Laura Pidcock as well, and we started digging on this along with Paul Peacock and Tony Devlin and people in our sector, Frank Gray, we started digging on this stuff, And you speak to the Labour Party and they're nowhere. Do you know, and I hope they're not trying to change track on this, because we certainly won't be, Howard. We need to stick to our guns on that, and you know that, and I know that. Do you know, it's about health and safety concerns. It's about driving down terms and conditions. We will not allow that to happen, Howard. And I know you're backing. That will never happen on your watch.
No, absolutely, Cliff. It won't, because we will be sticking to our principles in respect of it. For those who have never heard of a free port who might be watching, it's not confined to ports. This is a tax haven. It's all about deregulation. It's the Tories' blueprint plan for their type of free trade deal that comes out of Brexit. It's an offer to sectors that basically says that your tariffs are removed if you're in a free port zone, and you get tax benefits from being in a free port zone. But the rest of us will pay for all of that infrastructure to create these free ports. It'll move business from outside, inside. Companies will get benefit from tax benefits, but it will be workers who will suffer, because there will be deregulation and there will be an attempt to block trade unions from organising. And we don't even know who's going to have the control of these free ports. It's likely to be quangos, where the employers are right at the top of the list in respect of the decision makers. So Unite will be saying very clearly, if I'm General Secretary, that we do not support free ports. We want our assurances that we'll organise within them. And if we can't organise in free ports, then what you face is industrial action. So Andrea, it's over to you.
Thank you, Howard. And I just want to shout out Obaid, who said to the audience to basically keep nominating Howard to become General Secretary. So thank you, Obaid. And yes, I encourage people to get onto their branches to nominate Howard. So our next speaker is from Sunny Island, and she will be talking about uniting Ireland and young members. Her name is Laura Broxson, and it's great to have you here this evening, Laura. Over to you.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm the Equality Officer for the Approved Driving Instructor branch in Ireland. We're a fairly new group, but we are delighted to be a part of Unite. And I'd just like to touch on the fact that Howard has pledged to create a national organiser for young people, and also his focus on those in precarious work. So as someone who entered the workforce when I was a teenager, I was in those situations where I was in no contract work. I was in situations where there was workplace bullying, sexual harassment, racism, homophobia, pay inequality, and sexism. So at the time, you know, being a young person and inexperienced in the workforce, I wasn't sure how to deal with these situations. And I certainly wasn't thinking that a union could be there for me to help me deal with these situations, not just on behalf of myself, but my co-workers as well. And when I was faced with these situations, looking back on it now, it would have been so helpful to me if I had a union like Unite to be there for me and guide me as to how to deal with it and help the people in the work situations that I was in. So I, looking back, can't believe that I wasn't aware of unions and that they could be something that could help me and my co-workers in these situations. So I think it's hugely important to, you know, work with young people and let them know that there are these supports, because I didn't know, and my co-workers didn't know. And I think we need to be out there getting involved with people, you know, letting them know that there's these possibilities, these options, and help is there at hand. You don't have to deal with these things by yourself. And I think Howard is definitely the person to bring this forward. And when it comes to precarious work, it is so stressful. And I speak of this from personal experience, so stressful not knowing how many hours you might get from week to week. When you have rent to pay or mortgages or bills or car loans or whatever you have, to not be sure what your income is going to be week to week is so stressful, and it's just not acceptable. So I think it's extremely important to help mobilize and organize these people and help them protect their rights and help them secure contracts and secure job security and give them guidance as to what to do. So these are really important issues, especially for young people, because the younger you are, big industries will take advantage of that and take advantage of your vulnerability as an inexperienced person in the workplace. So this is something that really needs to change. It's happening all over the world, of course, but it's definitely happening in Ireland. And I know that Howard will pay special attention to Ireland to make sure that we get equal representation within Unite. And this is one of the many reasons that I'll be voting for Howard. And I'll be nominating him within my branch as well. So I'm very, very excited about that. And just in terms of Howard's progressiveness, in terms of diversity, and also recognizing the ever-changing systems in the workplace. Me now as a driving instructor who is self-employed, it's sort of unusual for people in our industry to be part of a union. But not only does Howard recognize that, but he wants to make sure that we are equal members of Unite, and we are, going to be allowed to be accessing all the democratic things that we should within Unite, and able to go for roles that we should, and that being self-employed doesn't prevent you from that kind of thing. So I'm very happy to be part of the campaign, and I cannot wait to vote for Howard. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Laura. That was an absolutely brilliant contribution. Thank you so much. And, all power to you for all of the campaigning that you've been doing lately. That's absolutely brilliant. People like you are the future of the union. So it's absolutely amazing to see young people getting involved, and the amount of work that you have done so far in the short time that you've been within the union. So Howard,
thank you so much.
So Howard, national organizer for young members. Tell us all about it, mate.
Yeah, national organizer for young members, a national organizer for precarious workers as well, and then there'll be a national organizer in respect of the fight against racism, Andrea. So, we've got to adapt. The reality for all of us is nobody wants to see precarious work in society. Nobody wants to see zero-hour contracts. Nobody wants to see the abuses that are going on in the workplaces at this moment in time. But I know from sitting on the hospitality Zooms again and again with young members that it's only by organising that we'll be able to defeat the practices that are going on in precarious workplaces. And that's a combination. That's resource. That's making sure that they have people who are focused solely on that job. And it's also about modernising. So a big area for me in respect of young workers and precarious workers is making sure that they have access to apps so as they can get immediate advice. As the amount of young women I've seen, Andrea, in Zooms who believe that they have to resign their job in order to take a claim for sexual harassment. And sexual harassment seems to be rife in sectors such as hospitality at the moment. So we've got to tackle this and put the resource in. And Laura's quite right as well that, unfortunately, the reality for us is our rules are defunct insofar as we know there's bogus self-employed going on. Community members, retired members, those who are self-employed, they need to be part of our constitutional committees. They shouldn't be excluded. Their voice has to be heard. And you'll see a commitment in the manifesto in respect of community members, retired members, and also those who are self-employed. And the final thing I'd say, Andrew, because obviously Laura is from Ireland, is far too long in that it's easy to say you believe in decentralisation in the union whenever you're from Ireland yourself, but far too long in the union, Ireland has been seen as the forgotten cousin, if you like. It's sort of somewhere over there, and that will not be happening under my General Secretary tenure. Ireland will get the resources they need. We'll speak for the issues that are going on in Ireland. Unite TV will be as relevant for Ireland as it is for every other part of our region. And obviously, politically, we know that we've got to drive in Ireland for workers' voices to be heard, because at this moment in time, it's two establishment parties who are sharing coalition with each other in the Dáil and preventing Irish working class voices from being heard. And we know we've got similar struggles to north of the border, where the Assembly didn't even sit for 2.5 years. That's how concerned they were for workers' voices whenever jobs were being lost left, right and centres. Towns like Ballymena just rife with redundancies, and it attacks on iconic industries such as Harland and Wolff, and the Assembly wasn't even sitting. So all of that will change in respect of it, because Unite will be stepped forward and making the political noise on behalf of workers in order to effect change.
Thank you, Howard. Wow. Beckett, vote Howard Beckett. Simple as that, isn't it? Right, back over to you, Howard.
Yes, listen, it's my great pleasure to introduce Nicola, who is one of our community members we've just been talking about. Nicola's a community member down in Swindon, but she also attended Bristol and Bath, or Bristol and Gloucester branch recently, to give them information in respect of our campaign. And it was fantastic to see that the first nomination that came in was from a community branch. I think everybody knows by now, Andrea, that there is differences in respect of the campaigns as to whether or not we are a union that continues to be ambitious about our role in society. I 100% support community membership. Nothing in our union is at the expense of any other part of our union. We can be industrial at the same time as having demands in society, and we can be political at the same time as making sure that our industrial sector demands are heard. So it's my great pleasure to introduce Nick to speak on behalf of community members in respect of what we need going forward for Unite to continue to play its important role in society.
Hi everybody. Howard, thank you for letting me speak. I'm really proud that Bristol and Gloucester area were the first to nominate you. And I sort of was at the beginning of that meeting and then found out, although I live in Bath, we're carved up quite weirdly. So actually I was supposed to be in the Swindon meeting, which is on the 20th of May. So my votes weren't needed, and so I've got a second bite at it. So hopefully me and another lady that got booted out will be able to make our votes count there. I've got a foot in both camps because I'm a Labour member. I'm on the executive here at Bath CLP, as well as a Unite community member. And so I'm absolutely thrilled that we've got you on the NEC, because we absolutely need your voice, Howard. Membership democracy is a big issue, and it's never been more important who sort of takes over as General Secretary in Unite. You're the only one holding sort of the Labour Party to account, the only candidate at the moment. You're holding politicians to account. You're standing up for membership democracy. I don't know where you get your energy from. Your work ethic is just incredible, and you had my vote anyway, but I was still doing some due diligence. And the more people I spoke to, the stories that came out about what you'd done behind the scenes, like Jenny Formby, I just don't know where you get your energy from. It's just incredible. But Unite community, I was really shocked at some of the, disinformation that had been going around, because, when I did my homework, I knew how involved you'd been from the very beginning. You've advocated for Unite community from the get-go. You were instrumental in putting the programme for members together. And although the normal branches, I'm not as au fait as all of you on Unite structure, but my understanding is the normal branches, you're more focused on, industrial matters, whereas, sort of we've got a different agenda, but we need to be working together. Sort of our strength is in our numbers. And with the pandemic, there's just going to be, unemployment and job insecurity is just going to rocket. It's never been more important to reach out into the communities and support them, and to get them on board on your battles as well, because it's everybody is involved and impacted by this. So it's how do we reach out and connect people, because with the Labour Party cutting back on community organising and laying people off, with them undermining our membership democracy, Labour is the political arm of the unions. Unite is the biggest union. Unite's been the only union that I can see that's actually been holding Labour to account and asking some tough questions over this past year. And Howard, you've been right up there, sort of with Laura Pidcock and Mish Raymond on the National Executive Committee. We absolutely need you. I haven't seen anybody else out of the candidates in Unite that has given me any confidence that, you not only will you represent us, that you won't sell out. You're all over everything. So I don't know what else I can say. I mean, the more people I speak to, the more stories I hear, and I'm just so impressed with your work ethic, your reach, your accessibility, and the sheer range of issues. I mean, I got involved. I have to thank a shout out to Zaria Phillips here down in the Bath area, because she got me involved in Unite Community. I wanted to go on an austerity march, And the Labour Party weren't organising anything. So, you know, I hopped on a coach over in Bristol, and that was really when I joined Unite Community. And, you know, I met an amazing people on the coach there and back chatting, and learnt about so many issues. I got involved originally in advocacy after a road traffic accident that changed my life. Thankfully, I was very fortunate in being supported, but I met so many people on the way that weren't, and I realised that they were slipping through the cracks. And so that was another thing that Unite Community just really impressed me with the training that you do for people, the advocacy services with them slashing, you know, sort of support services. When you go to the council, you go and apply for any benefit, there's sort of, you know, you expect those people to be helping you to, you know, access support that you're entitled to and that you need. To find that those people are actually outsourced to employed to outsource private companies and have targets to actually, you know, knock you off the list and, you know, stand between you and what you're entitled to is quite shocking. And it's not a level playing field. It was just those that could represent themselves that were actually, you know, getting what they're entitled to. So that's how that was really my journey and how I got involved. And I'm so impressed that you're doing that. And I can see that there's going to be a greater demand for those types of services with the Tories still in government, with the Labour Party as it is, with the leadership not challenging those issues. And the Community Unite and the normal branches are really going to have to come together and fill the gap where Labour's sort of dropped the baton on community organising. So Howard, I know that you're going to champion that and make sure that, you know, we deliver. So thank you for everything that you're doing. And I'm just so encouraged seeing all these nominations coming in. It's fantastic. It's really building momentum.
Thank you so much, Nicola. That's really brilliant. Thank you for that contribution. Absolutely fantastic. And Andrea, Nicola has raised so much there to talk about, hasn't she? So much going on in the political arena. And Nicola, just to reference, you know, on the community, we will be offering welfare benefits advice to community. We'll also be getting rid of this rule that prevents community from sitting on our constitutional committees. That there'll be proportionality in respect of that. Eve put in the chat about don't forget retired members, and we're doing the same thing for retired members. And of course, there needs to be a link between retired members and community branches, and then a link into industry. But really, you know, Andrea, the point that Nicola is raising is the essence of this about a union for society and no stepping back from our role in society.
Howard, do you believe that, you know, obviously having the community branches, do you believe obviously putting more funding into them is the way forward for Unite?
Yeah, they certainly need more finance, Andrea, because we have to support them in respect of, because they support industrial disputes, and there's a commitment in there that whenever they're supporting industrial disputes, that then there needs to be a connection between those industrial branches and the community branch going forward. And Nicola also referenced, you know, this worry that people have right now about what's going on in the political sphere. And I'm just going to reference this and be as honest as I can, Andrea. The time for Unite, any trade union movement, to be considering themselves as non-political is, you know, that argument was had over 100 years ago. And it was decided then that working class voices have to be heard in the corridors of power. There are going to be arguments, and I would be one of those who argue that politics is far too Westminster-centric, needs to be much more federal, start devolving. The Unite's resources need to be in the regions and in our communities and in our nations, that's where we can punch our influence. But just because people are at this moment in time feeling disenfranchised with Labour, don't conflate that to an argument as to whether a union should be non-political. Unions are political, and we are political because politics is in the workplace. What's going up in INEOS right now is part of the politics of society. What's going on with fire and rehire right now is the politics of society. What's going on with precarious work in all parts of our union is down to the politics of society. Our departments need not work in silos. Industrial, work with education, work with politics, find our champions, have candidates, let people go on this journey from being an activist to being a rep, to being an officer, be a wider rep in society. That's our role. And yes, to be critical. Keir Starmer failing to sign Unite's fire and rehire letter is just pathetic. And we have a responsibility to say it's pathetic. Otherwise, it'll just continue. I'm hearing tonight that Keir Starmer is sacking Angela Rayner as chair of the Labour Party. Now, there may well be criticisms of Angela Rayner right now, but the idea that he doesn't look inward to his own team who have advised him on the way he's conducted himself over the last 12 months, or the idea that he doesn't immediately go into his mobile phone and block Peter Mandelson's number is quite astonishing. Because if he continues on this track, he will be irrelevant to workers. But here and now, let's make the statement. Even if Keir Starmer is irrelevant to workers, Unite will not be. We will continue to educate and politicise our members. We will continue to be in communities. We will continue to play the role that Unite has played in society, a bastion of the left, moving the movement to the left, standing up for the establishment and giving people a voice.
Nice one, Howard. Sharad agreed with you and said that politics is everywhere in life. So at the end of the day, you know, it's everywhere we are, and we have a role to play as a union. So we are going to go over to our next speaker. I'm really excited as she's actually been elected councillor as of last night. So I'm really, 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 really happy. Congratulations. So our next speaker is from Manchester Community Branch. She is a self-employed artist in the community, and she will be talking about community branches and anti-racism pledges. I am so excited to hear from Akua Bayanu. Over to you, Akua.
Thanks, Andrea. And it's lovely actually to be back. I've been absent from Andrea's company for about the last 3 or 4 weeks, you can imagine. And I'm also going to apologise because I am shattered. I'm absolutely shattered. The count went on late last night, and then I still have loads of work to do. So, yes, I am actually a member of Greater Manchester Community Branch, and I'm going to do this, Andrea. It's Akua Bayunu. I'm just going to start saying this is how you pronounce the name, so there we go. It's all right. I've done the other version for ages, so it's my fault. So we ended on that politics is in every sphere of life, and I think the thing I want to start to talk about in speaking is that actually, also, if we're talking about racism and anti-racism, that Black people are across our sector. I'm a member of Unite Community, but there are Black people in all the sectors and branches of Unite, and that's my starting point on this, because sometimes I feel we're siloed off into sort of like, you know, like there's working class and then there's Black people, there's disabled people, there's Black people, there's people working in industry, then there's Black people, and that's just not the case, thankfully, in our society. Though we do struggle. You know, there is still a race pay gap. People still struggle if they have names like mine in terms of getting interviews for jobs. So it's a reality. We're also in a country that has to own the fact it was the leader of the transatlantic slave trade and still has statues across this country celebrating those individuals who cost millions of people's lives and put us into so much misery that we are still, it's not the past, it's not the history, we're still trying to overcome and get out of. And recently, for a government to propose that you should have 10 years for, you know, decriminalize people for attacking a statue when we've only got 5 for rape is just, you know, it shows us really clearly where we stand. And also, I think one of the other things that, you know, we're going to talk about, and I'm really interested in seeing in terms of the equalities part of the manifesto, Howard, is around all the different ways that people are oppressed. And for Black people, our struggle has, I think, been rooted in our right to self-identify as people, as human beings. So that's why I'm so on side with, you know, all the other struggles that people are having to identify the oppression they face and be allowed to identify it in whatever way they choose. But I'm going to talk specifically. So I'm also a member of Labour Black Socialists alongside Andrea, and alongside her, I'm also a spokesperson for our recent, launched in January campaign for an actively anti-racist Labour Party. So before I do that, actually, one of the most important things from our perspective is the fact that Howard understands the continuum and works for the continuum between community, the workplace, and politics. It is essential if we're going to tackle anything the workforce and in terms of racism, that we see it holistically. And it's an interesting battle. I'm also in Greater Manchester Tenants Union, and we had to fight there. I'm the chair of their anti-racism subcommittee, to have some of the members to understand why we would support no police in schools, which is a highly racialized issue, but not to do with the tenants union. Of course it's to do with the tenants union, because how can people focus on their housing if their children are suffering in the schools and on the streets? So sorry, that's my intro to who I am and where I'm coming from. And then I'm going to look at the detail, Howard, if I may, in terms of the manifesto. I mean, first, one of the things I do need to talk about, because I keep using the term black, and I've been, and Andrea can sort of chase me up around this. I use it holistically to mean anybody from a community that has been impacted by colonialism and imperialism. And so it covers communities from the African subcontinent, from the Caribbean due to this transatlantic slave trade, from South Asia, from all over the world. It's a very specific term. And for me, that's a very specific UK term, use of black, because we tend to, because of the massiveness of media and how it, and especially US media, to be pushed down this route that it's only African heritage people. And I'm not going to deny that actually the racism that black people who are from the African or African heritage is very specific, and we need to look at it in detail. But I use that term holistically because I believe in uniting this force and bringing that experience to bear in our struggle for sort of socialist rights. So I'm wanting to bring up the manifesto, which is so hot off the press that I'm still looking at it. So that's going to be one of the first things. Use BAEM. Let's talk about that. Because there's a lot of resistance, so much resistance, yes, from what I'm going to call black people, but that isn't, there's not an easy answer, but that's going to be part of the debate. So we're really keen to look at the specifics, and then we love the specifics that you're putting in your manifesto about how you're going to have change. So we actually know that level of investment is going to be in there, but not in the education of all the workforce, of all Unite members, to understand where this is coming from, and to see that you need more black voices to be able to shape that. Because the one thing that I'm really against is the idea that this is some sort of gesture of kindness. It's part of our movement, and if we don't include everyone, we lose. We lose our experience, we lose our voices, and we have experiences that will help shape this going forward. Do you know I can rabbit, so we can get into the detail. Go on, Andrea, get into the detail with me and with Howard. Stop.
Right, so Howard, obviously Akura's brought up, stuff that's in the manifesto, and obviously the fact that we're both from Labour, Black Socialists, and the racism that's been happening within the Labour Party. In your manifesto, Howard, you have got that you're going to provide an anti-racist organiser. Could you go into that a bit more detail so the audience can understand more about that, please?
Well, to be honest, Andrea, it came out of a conversation that you and I had whenever we were at a protest a few weeks back in respect to the housing sector, and you talked to me about the fact that so many disputes that are going on in the housing sector right now. It's relevant to the reality of the fact that every time there's outsourcing, and this isn't just the housing sector, it's true for transport sectors, it's true for the care sector, it's true for in the NHS, that every time there's outsourcing, the provision of care diminishes in order for profit to increase. So it is only ultimately either those who are most vulnerable who lose out in care, or workers who lose out in terms and conditions. That's the reality each and every time there's outsourcing. And you referenced to me that obviously the predominance of our black members who are working in care sectors at the front line, exposed through COVID, and then a layer of white management taking the decisions. And that's the type of exposure that we need to give. That's the work that needs to happen now, and that's the reason as to why I'm committing to an anti-racist organiser. And obviously there's other commitments in there about decolonizing our assets. There's commitments in there in respect to show racism, the red card. I want to see us step forward in order to educate our members about racism in society, because it's a fundamental divisional structure that's intended to prevent working voices heard, and it's intended to attack socialism. But I have to agree with the Kurd as well. I'm hearing it in Ireland in particular, where we're seeking to try and organise amongst the traveller community, the Gypsy, Romanian traveller community, and they're obviously experiencing extraordinary prejudice at the moment. And once again, we need to step forward in order to give them a voice. And as you know, Andrea, as I've voiced, the Police Crime and Sentencing Bill is a terrible attack on civil liberties. It's an attack that references institutionalized racism. Whenever you look to protect the statues of slave traders, that is institutionalized racism. But it's also an attack on the traveller community that looks to criminalize nomadic life. And then, as we all know, it's an attack on the rights of protest. So there's a clear commitment in the manifesto that if that piece of legislation, as is of now, is a bill at the moment, if that becomes an act of Parliament, Unite will not recognise it as being a legitimate law. We will confront it, and we will object to it with civil disobedience.
Yes, so Howard, you know, for Black members that are affiliated to the Labour Party, and obviously there is a rise of anti-Black racism within the party, how are you going to support these members moving forward?
Well, I think I gave you a personal commitment, Andrew, that I'm going to raise this at the next NEC by way of a motion in regard to it. I want to know what's going on with these complaints and why they haven't been progressed. The Labour Party has to move away from any perception of having a hierarchy of racism, and they have to deal with these complaints in the same officious fashion that they're saying that they're going to deal with other complaints. And we cannot hide from this any longer. It's too much of it is coming in, and there's too much commentary that's coming on. Labour is in danger of having itself tagged. So I've given a commitment to you and to Labour Black Socialists that I will raise this at the next NEC, and I will do.
Thank you,
and
Howard.
I'll make sure all of the left does as well, Andrew, by the way.
Oh, thank you, Howard. And I guess, obviously, you know, over the pandemic, Black and Asian workers have been the workers who are more likely to be made redundant, who are more likely to have been off work with stress. I've obviously, you know, that I'm a rep for housing workers, and a lot of my members have been either signed off with stress. They've been brought in for grievances over bullying and stuff like that. How is the union going to support these members?
By stepping forward and being militant. I will just reference that we have now got a mental health helpline. It's due to be launched next week. It's intended for our reps, but it will also move forward to those members who our reps have identified as needing mental health. It involves counselling as well. It will be a free service for our reps and for those members who our reps feel need to use it. The union is obviously paying for it, and it's long overdue. And you know, Cliff again can reference the amount of members in his sector the amount of reps who have suffered mental health through COVID. I'm going to give a shout out to British Airways reps in particular, who faced extraordinary abuses over social media because they were at the front end of looking after members during the fire and rehire, whenever it started with British Airways. So all of those commitments are in there, Andrea, to move this forward and make sure that we're talking about these issues. And I want to just give a shout out as well, if I can, to a dispute in your sector in St Mungo's at the moment, Andrea, where we have a rep who unbelievably raised a grievance in respect of bullying of management, attached to it 12 witnesses to the bullying. Not one single witness was ever interviewed, and St Mungo's, a charity, responded by taking out disciplinary action against our rep, accusing him of gross misconduct for raising these grievances. And the members in St Mungo's have reacted as they should, and they've taken industrial action, and they're now on strike right here to say that that type of victimization cannot go on in their workplace. And that's the type of response that we want to see across the union.
Exactly. Thank you, Howard, and thank you for bringing up the pickets that are going on at St Mungo's. There's going to be quite a few more next week as well, and following weeks until this is resolved, because it's just unacceptable how these workers have been treated. So, Howard, how have you found your launch this evening?
Well, it's been great, Andrea. Obviously, we're running out of time, but it's been great, and this we're gonna have to do more of it because we need. There's so many people out there to want to speak. I saw coming up on the chat was Spud, and we definitely need somebody from the steel sector on, and it would be great to have Daz back on a Zoom with Airbus having nominated for us today. So there's so much to do, but Andrew, it's just such a large document. I'm going to ask people to go to it. It's not a difficult read. It introduces every section with a narrative in respect of why we're making the commitments that we're making. There are video links to it, so as people can just link in a video and you'll hear me talking about the individual section. And it runs through with a theme. And if I can, Andrew, the theme to the manifesto is best described as a 5-point theme. We are going to modernise this union, and we're going to do it because that's the way to tell our own story. Mainstream media should not be telling the story of trade unionism. If we are sharing the industrial disputes with people around all of our regions and our nations, so as they can see the successes of industrial disputes, they will come to us. If we can give the experience of our members in Goodlord, for example, at the moment, fired and rehired in London because they're being told that they can now work from home, so they do not need the London living wage. Young members standing up, getting in a union because they believe in collectivism and fighting back. Now, if that story could be told, imagine how the students who that employer needs in order to make their living, imagine how the students would respond if they saw that story. And it's that linkage that Unite TV can do. And I know Cliff is passionate about internationalism, and rightly so, and international commitments are in the manifesto, but imagine how modernising our union, how we would be able to tell the story of struggles that are going on in sister unions around the world, how we could link in to workers in places such as Palestine, so as they can tell their story of oppression and we can have people see it. This Unite TV is long overdue, and it will be what will find us the champions of industry, communities and society, and it will be what will grow our union. When people hear the love of collectivism, they will want to be part of collectivism in order to change their lives. We're going to decentralise the union, Andrea, which is not just words. It's from my experience whenever I was in the West Midlands. Nations will have their power, regions will have their power. A general secretary is there to empower others. We are moving to federal structures in our Isles at the moment, and in order to be ahead of that, Unite needs to move to decentralising our powers away from Holborn into our regions and into our nations, allow them to work in their communities, work in their workplaces, link the communities to the workplaces, and make sure that we find the champions going forward. And we're not going to step back. There is going to be no stepping back from our role in society. Unite is here to stay. We will link our departments, our education department, our industrial department, our political department. My experience in running finance over the last 12 months after the sad, sudden departure of Ed Sabisky has shown me that we are an incredibly powerful financial force in this country. The job that Len McCluskey has done in growing the financial wealth of this union has been exceptional, supported by the executive. And our union now has a balance sheet of well over £500 million. We've got cash assets of 140 million. We've got a £40 million strike fund. We're making a commitment in the manifesto to say to the executive that strike pay every day should be at £75, so as workers can fight back. We have the strength to play a role in every part of society going forward, and we're going to be that force for equality, Andrea, in our union. We are going to talk again and again about equality. We're going to fight institutionalized racism. We're going to use our partnership with organisations such as Show Racism the Red Card to make sure that the voices of our BAME communities and those who are being victimised in society are heard through Unite, and that we champion their cause and we never ever step back from it. And of course, Andrea, finally, we are going to be talking every single day about workers' rights. Day one workers' rights, an end to 0-hour contracts, the banning of fire and rehire, a 4-day working week, workers benefiting from automation, a struggle for early retirement for those involved in manual labour, including care homes. All of these issues are outlined in the manifesto, and we will be championing them for the next 5 years after the General Secretary election. So please nominate us, and please and vote for us. We're on a journey, all of us together, to make a better tomorrow than we had yesterday.
Thank you, Howard. And yeah, thank you to all of the speakers that have come this evening. You heard Howard. What you all need to do now is get to your branches, get in touch with them, find out when your branch meeting is, nominate Howard, and join our campaign so we can get Howard elected to be General Secretary of Unite Union, so we can move forward with everybody involved in the union, so we can have, you know, more fighting, more protests, and more of Howard speaking the truth. Thank you all again for joining us, and yeah, let's nominate Howard and Beckett. Vote Howard Beckett, mate. Woo!
Yay. Well done, Andrea.